Residents of northeastern Syria are adjusting to a new reality following a U.S. brokered ceasefire between the Syrian government and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces known as the SDF. The deal was reached after weeks of fighting in the region led to major territory losses for Kurdish troops. Now, under the agreement, Kurdish forces will gradually be integrated into the Syrian army, and Kurdish civil bodies will become part of the state. Since then, a small number of Syrian government forces have entered Kurdish strongholds with the stated goal of facilitating this integration. But the situation is volatile, and many Kurds are skeptical about what they perceive as the erosion of their de facto autonomy. DW's Mohamad and his team traveled to northeast Syria to capture the mood among the Arab and the Kurdish communities there.
I'm traveling towards Al-Hasaka in Syria's northeast. The road there tells the story of a shifting balance of power. Flags of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces have been replaced by those of the Syrian government. This is one of many positions the SDF abandoned as it withdrew from Arab-majority villages in late January.
This used to be a school, but the SDF turned it into a military base and destroyed it before retreating. Now we just want to live in peace. We want the government to provide bread, water, and electricity. That's all we ask.
Further north, markets are open, and the state is slowly reasserting its presence. It's a relief for many Arab residents who say they felt marginalized under SDF control. On this wall, someone marked the date that Kurdish forces withdrew from the town of El-Shaddadi.
Since the government took control, bakeries are working again, and we're getting more hours of electricity. Before that, we were deprived and impoverished.
We are driving further north and stop to put on our protective vests. We're having to be more careful the closer we get to Al-Hasaka because of repeated ceasefire breaches in the area. This Arab family has decided to return to the city anyway.
It's safe for us to return now to Al-Hasaka.
Are you from Al-Hasaka? And are you going back to your home?
Yes, God willing.
Whether Al-Hasaka is indeed safe, we are unable to determine ourselves. This is as close to the city of Al-Hasaka as we can get. Just days ago, government forces entered through this point, but have yet to claim control of the city. They won't let us go in. And the SDF, who still has large control of the city and is operating this roadblock, has also told us no. But we are working with a journalist who's in Al-Hasaka. He's describing an uneasy atmosphere in the city since government forces have arrived, with heavily armed Kurdish forces still patrolling the streets. Kurdish residents we spoke to told us they're worried that the agreement might not hold and that they are unsure whether their voices will be heard in the new Syria.
So far, there are no guarantees. We want to see real proof that Kurds will have their rights, that our identity and our language will be preserved. We want all of that to be written into the constitution.
In January, Syria's president issued a decree recognizing Kurdish as a national language and protecting Kurdish culture. But after 3 collapsed ceasefire deals and a long history of conflict with the central government, Syria's Kurds are looking for more than promises.
Well, I'm joined now by Wladimir van Wilgenburg. He's a journalist and co-author of the book, The Kurds of Northern Syria. Wladimir has recently been on the ground in northeast Syria. He joins me tonight from Erbil, the capital of Iraq's autonomous Kurdistan region. Wladimir, it's good to have you with us. Let me start by just asking you, why are the Kurds in Syria, why are they so worried about losing their de facto political autonomy?
Well, I mean, the Kurds in Syria, as I described in my book, they have had some form of autonomous administration since 2013. Since the start of the Syrian crisis, they have managed to control their own areas. And now with the current situation, they are threatening to lose that. I mean, before they were controlling a much larger area, including Arab majority areas. But now the areas that they control have been reduced to some areas of the Hasaka province and Kobani. And they're basically afraid that Damascus will centralize control and also will not allow them to keep any form of local self-governance.
The SDF leadership, they signed up to this deal with the Syrian government. I'm wondering how much support, though, this deal has among SDF fighters.
Well, I mean, especially in the beginning of the deal, a lot of SDF fighters, they were quite critical of this deal. They were not very happy with it. But they don't really have much choice because in the past, the US was supporting the SDF against ISIS, but now they seem to have thrown their support in favor of Damascus. So they don't have as much international support as in the past. And so they have been forced to take this deal. And the only other alternative would be heavy fighting, which would destroy the urban centers where Kurds live in Syria.
Yeah, I mean, for years, the U.S. and the SDF, they were allied in the fight against Islamic State militants in Syria. How do Syrian Kurds, how do they view the end of this cooperation, and how do they feel about the United States?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, the U.S. officials have always said that the relationship with the SDF is transactional. But many Kurds, they feel betrayed because they have not only Kurds, but also many Arabs, they have given their lives with the SDF in the fight against ISIS. And then suddenly the US have pulled out the rug, and they are now supporting Damascus. And also, you know that Damascus is run by an Islamist government that actually used to be listed. So they feel a bit, they feel a bit betrayed. And there's a lot of people that are quite sad about the current situation. But they hope now that at least this agreement will be implemented peacefully and that they can still keep some of their rights.
What would you say are the key challenges facing al-Sharat's government as it tries to integrate Syria's Kurds into the central state? I mean, when we're talking about the Syrian government and we're talking about the Kurds, I mean, are these two like, oil and water? Do they not mix, or are they going to be forced to mix?
Well, it's a sort of a forced marriage almost, you could say. I mean, we saw some of these meetings now taking place between Damascus and Kurdish fighters. Also, one of us was taking place today. The faces didn't look very happy, but they don't really have much choice because the other choice basically is another conflict. And you also saw that some Arab civilians are also not happy with the deal because they want to have fully centralized control, but the agreement still gives some power to localized Asa'ish units and SDF units in these areas. And you also see that Kurdish civilians are very worried that government forces from Damascus would come and rule over Kurdish areas. So on both sides, people that are not happy. But the only other alternative is basically a full-out war again, and that's also what a lot of international actors are against. And you also saw the French foreign minister was in Erbil today to talk to the Syrian Kurds and Iraqi Kurds to basically make sure that this agreement is implemented peacefully.
I mean, just one more question about the military. The Kurdish female fighters, their unit known as the YPJ, they once controlled vast areas of northeast Syria. I mean, they're known around the world for their fighting abilities. What's going to happen to them? Are they going to be eventually pushed out by a military that is much more conservative and hostile to women in combat?
Well, I mean, according to the agreement, brigades of the SDF will be integrated into the new Syrian army, and those brigades will also include female fighters. And I mean, they will not just lay down their weapons, and that's also not part of their deal. So the female fighters will just be part of this new brigades that will fall under the Ministry of Defense. And it will be a bit more complicated in the beginning, but we also saw, for instance, female commanders recently joining the negotiations with Damascus in, for instance, in the Hasaka province. So they are not sidelined, they are still there, and they still play an important role in local security units of the Kurds.
What about so-called Islamic State and the detained militants from Islamic State? Do they still pose a threat?
Well, I mean, of course, they still pose a threat. I mean, since the fall of the Assad regime, they have moved into urban centers. They have been also carrying out attacks. The U.S. have still been carrying out airstrikes against ISIS militants. And of course, now that the U.S. say they're going to pull out from Syria, there's also a risk of ISIS infiltration in the new Syrian security forces, and some of them also have escaped recently during the fighting in, for instance, the Shadadi prison, which held many ISIS fighters. So definitely there's still a threat, and you also see that today I saw that in Iraq a suicide bomber blew himself up when Iraqi security forces were trying to arrest him. So there's still an ISIS threat both in Iraq and Syria, and now you also see that the U.S. is going to probably withdraw more forces, so it's going to be more difficult to control ISIS.
Vladimir, let me just ask you, is this the end of Kurdish autonomy in Syria?
I mean, it's not necessarily the end. I mean, if the agreement is implemented as it looks like now, they will still have some form of command and control over Kurdish security forces. But the biggest threat is more that this agreement will break down because of internal pressure, and that you will have major fighting again, and then that basically they will push the SDF to dissolve itself. But if the SDF, as it is, the agreement now is, will be part of the Syrian Ministry of Defense, they will still have some local rights and more command and control, but it will, of course, not look like what they had before the fighting started.
Wladimir van Wilgenburg joining us tonight from Erbil. Wladimir, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.